So here I am, 39 years old, and I just found out that my wife, who's 38, has been cheating on me for the past 2 years. We've been together for 17 years, married for 14. Before I dive into the details, I need to share a bit of the backstory so you can understand everything and judge for yourself. Did she have a right to cheat, or was I just paying a debt I owed from the past? Back in 2012, I took my wife to the hospital to have her tonsils removed. They took her belongings since she couldn't bring them into the surgery room, and her phone kept buzzing nonstop. So, naturally, I decided to see who was blowing her up. What I found shocked me: tons of inappropriate emails between her and some guy at work. She was reading 50 Shades of Grey at the time and referred to this guy as her Christian Grey, a name she used to call me. I was beyond furious, but she couldn't talk after surgery, so I had no immediate answers. On the drive home, I handed her a piece of paper and a pen, demanding she write down the truth. She wrote, "It was nothing but flirting." I grabbed our 2-year-old and a bag of clothes, and headed from California to Arizona for a quick weekend getaway with my best friend and his wife, just to get away from her for a bit. When I came back, she said she deleted the email and promised it wouldn't happen again. But even years later, I couldn't shake the feeling that she'd betrayed me in a way I couldn't overlook. I wanted revenge. It seemed like the only way I could move forward. That's when I met this woman through a client of mine. She gave me attention, and soon enough, we started texting. While my wife would go out with her friends and party, I'd secretly leave my son with my mom and go meet this woman. We ended up having an affair, and eventually, I fell in love with her. About 9 months later, my affair partner told me she was pregnant. The first thing that popped into my head was Usher's Confessions song. I knew I had to confess to my wife, which I did. She took it surprisingly well, said she kind of already knew and that God had been preparing her for that moment. I told her I wanted a divorce and was ready to start a new life with this woman, but she convinced me we could work things out. She said we should go to church more and get therapy from the pastor. How could I turn that down? I had to break the news to the other woman, who thought we were going to start a new life together, that it wasn't going to happen. Then, just a few months later, my wife tells me she's pregnant. Turns out, it was about 3 months after the other woman. She wanted to feel more secure, so she pretty much forced me into having another child with her. Now, it's December 2014, and I went from having 1 kid to suddenly having 3, just like that. It's been a wild ride, but I'm doing my best to be there for all my kids. Let's jump to the present now. My wife and I have definitely had our share of ups and downs over the years, but I can honestly say I've grown a lot, and I'm proud of how we're raising our kids together. I've worked hard to stay faithful and committed, putting effort into rebuilding our relationship. Both of us travel for work from time to time, so it's not unusual for us to be away from each other. But here's where everything takes a turn. I recently found out that for the past 2 years, my wife has been having an affair with her boss. All those happy hour hangouts after work, every time she worked overtime, every business trip to San Diego, and even Valentine's Day spent in Portland. He was always there, keeping her company in a hotel room. Here's how I found out. One evening, she went out for drinks after work, and I asked, "What time are you coming home?" She said she'd be home by 9 p.m. But when 9 rolled around, she wasn't home. I called her again, and got no answer. Finally, I got a text from her with a picture of one of her female coworkers, saying she was just having a few more drinks before heading out. What struck me as odd was that she could text me, but couldn't pick up the phone and call. I zoomed in on the picture she sent, and I noticed something. There was a napkin on the table with the name of the bar written on it. I didn't hesitate. I jumped in the car and drove 45 minutes to the bar. When I walked in, there she was, sitting at the bar with her boss, his arm around her. They both looked shocked when they saw me. She quickly blurted out, "Okay, bye," as if she was trying to brush me off. I replied, "Bye. But I just got here. Did I interrupt something?" She claimed she had already closed her tab and was getting ready to leave. I stuck around with her boss. At this point, He was pretty drunk and started talking to me about his wife. He told me how she never pays attention to him, and how they just do whatever they want. This was the first time I'd ever met the guy, and here he was getting way too personal. Then he asked me, "Have you ever caught your wife cheating?" I told him no, but if I ever did, it wouldn't be pretty. As he ordered another drink, I noticed my wife calling him repeatedly on his phone. That struck me as odd, so I paid close attention. In the middle of his drink, he got up and walked out, and I thought he was just heading to the bathroom. But to my surprise, he left the bar entirely. I headed home, with a million questions swirling in my mind. When I confronted my wife, her excuse was, "I'm sorry, I should have told you he was with us too." I'm not usually the jealous type, but a friend suggested I check our phone records, so I did. And when I saw the calls and messages, my heart sank. She had been talking to him for 15 to 30 minutes every Monday through Friday after work for the past 2 years. I confronted her with the phone records, and her excuse was that after work, she had end-of-day reporting to do, and he needed the numbers for his boss. It was such a convincing lie. But here's the thing, she's not salaried. She clocks in and out, so from an HR standpoint, doing that kind of reporting after hours would be considered illegal. I needed proof of their conversations, but how could I get it? That's when I decided to start recording their calls. I'm not going to get into the details of how I did it, but once I heard what was said, my heart shattered. She had these conversations with her cousin, talking about how much excitement her boss brought into her life, not just the sex, but how funny and goofy he was. She mocked me, saying how dumb I was to believe those end-of-day calls were real. She mentioned that they'd have to lay low for a while, saying, "Where there's a will, there's a way." Then, there was the conversation between the two of them, where they openly professed their love for one another, talking about how they made each other feel. Straight up caught. I was furious, but honestly, I had no idea what to do. Do I go to their HR department? My wife had just gotten a promotion. Should I tell them it's because she's sleeping with her boss? I did the only thing I could think of. I reached out to his wife. I did some serious digging, with some help from a good friend who thrives on drama. I found her on LinkedIn and waited. When she called, I told her everything. We put all the pieces together, and it turned out they'd been having an affair for years, while both of us were made fools. We even did a 4-way call, but they denied everything, even after I played them the recordings. Eventually, they both came clean. Now I'm left asking myself, do I stay for the kids, or do I leave her since I've paid off the debt from my own mistakes? She's begging for me to come back, but I've already moved out. I pick up the kids every morning to take them to school. She still works under him, and she swears it won't happen again, but how can I trust that after 2 years of her loving another man? She let him into her heart, and into her bed. So, do I take this as my chance to leave and start fresh? Or do I stay to make sure my kids grow up in a 2-parent household? Is there any hope for this toxic, unhealthy marriage? Should I try to get her boss fired for what he's done in all of this? What's the next step? I know 2 wrongs don't make a right, but I'm looking for advice from anyone who's managed to keep their family together for the sake of their kids.